Hello and welcome back to Just Another Football Podcast. Back again. I'm back again after my week enforced break. And I'm joined tonight by Ali. How you doing, mate?
Doing good. Pretty busy week, but hello. We're back.
We'll get into some of our what we've been up to in the last week. But before we do, we've got a collector's item on tonight's episode, which is the fact that young George, number 8, has made it into this episode. It's been a while, George. How you doing, pal?
It has been a while. It's been a long hiatus, but I'm back. Yeah, I was got business to attend to, I suppose. But no, I'm back.
Loads of business. God,
yeah,
where have you been?
Those that know, I hate everything that is now associated with that saying. So
I didn't know that as well.
Yeah, honestly, certain individuals have just ruined those words for me.
I actually don't know the backstory behind this, so that's a very intriguing thing. Maybe off air.
No, trust me. In any case, I just want to kind of quickly prefix the start of this with, if energy levels are running a bit low in this episode, I just want to, apologize in advance. I was explaining to the guys before we started recording, it's been a long weekend for me, involving a 16-hour trip yesterday back from skiing. And I'm absolutely knackered from that, and then had to go to a wedding today, and it's just been a drag of a weekend. So what better way to finish it off than coming on this podcast and ranting about football, basically. I'm looking forward to it.
What a first world problem.
I know, it's awful. Truly awful. What have you guys been up to? Anything interesting?
Long day at work. I actually ended up missing pretty much all of North Liverpool because I was at work, but I ended up watching much of the game and most of the highlights package that NBC put out. Then we'll be talking about this later. But a pet peeve I have, and I love my job, and it do not get me wrong, but I do get to miss a lot of out on a lot of football. But then I caught Tottenham City was Tottenham City was one of the best games I've seen in a while. But we'll talk about those two. But yeah, long week at work.
Stressful.
But we'll get...
So I had to watch all the weekend's games in the airport yesterday on some streams, and it's just it's a stressful experience. Particularly when you're watching your own team, it's like, it's not what you want to be be really. No. You want to be there or at home watching it on your couch rather than not quite able to take it all in. So I wouldn't be able to cope if my job incorporated what yours did, Ali, which means you miss games. George, do you want to give the listeners any particular reason for your continued absences? Have you? Do you want to just clear that up, or is it that interesting?
It's really not that interesting. It's just work. I work American hours, so sometimes, unfortunately, it does overlap with our recordings. I mean, interesting update, I suppose, since we last spoke, was that I went to the Newcastle Everton game, and Everton chanted super Frank, obviously the chant. I think most people know, and I physically cringed. So I'm really glad. I'm really glad.
That's totally wrong.
Yeah, Newcastle had them. So
and they stopped them 3-1. Good riddance.
I guess for those listening to the first time to the podcast, you'll know later on the episode that George is a Chelsea fan, but you live right at Newcastle's ground, St. James's Park. So yeah, just a bit of context.
On his doorstep.
On the doorstep.
Yep. On the doorstep for
brilliant stuff.
Young George. Yeah, it's a good one to take in. In any case, we've updated the listeners on what we've been up to before we get into this episode. So, without further ado, we'll recap some of the weekend's action. Okay, so we'll start with, what was probably the main talking point of the weekend, which was, unfortunately, Tottenham getting a win at the Etihad against Manchester City.
Unfortunately. That's the best day of my life.
I know. Well, the thing is, Ali, I want to just alert the listeners to your thoughts during the game yesterday. So... Just before Ali, tries to waffle about how good Spurs were and what a great performance it was by Conte, and Ali
Oh.
yesterday,
Hmm.
he said, and I quote, "I'm actually finding this Spurs performance a bit pathetic, so hard to watch." So this was yesterday at 6:30. It would have been half time, or
Close
just
to
before the
half-time.
second half started.
Yeah.
At the time, it was 1-1. Spurs went on to win the game 3-2. Any part of you that regrets that, Ali?
Not necessarily at that point, to be honest. And
Yeah.
they did change things second half. The main reason Spurs did end up scoring the goals, the high quality chances that they created, is because they changed their approach second half. I thought for much of the first half they got the early goal. Brilliant goal. Like, by all means, and we'll talk about that later on from the kind of tactical perspective. But I thought Tottenham, for large portions of the game, were way too passive. Way too passive.
Yeah. Do you think, though, it's one of those where you score so early? Like, you're 1-0 up practically, what was it, 4 minutes into the game? And there's kind of this tendency then to kind of try and at least hold on to what you've got. Whereas then you sort of said there was a shift in the second half where it was, the game gets back to 1-1. And I think they probably realised they couldn't keep playing the way they were, because if they did, they were just going to get penned in and it was going to be attack after attack. So you have to offer some threat going the other way. Do you think that was any part of it? The fact that they scored so early and then, felt like they probably had something to hold on to?
I think that's a fair point. I also think that you have an opportunity now that Man City are pushing forward even more for an equalizer. They're already chasing, like they already have nothing to lose after the 1-0 being 1-0 down. Like Man City had to win. So once they're 1-0 down, they'll be on the attack even further. And Man City aren't used to being in a situation where they're behind.
No.
So I thought there was an opportunity, and there were the spaces to do so for similar, phases of attack. I do believe now that they have Bentancur and Kulusevski added to the squad. They do have the ability to pass it around. Christian Romero is a really technically sound defender.
He's
very
good
good on the ball. So they have those three additions, and previously they didn't have a lot of good ball distributors. Now they can kind of suck in possession and break. So if they keep possession for just a little bit, make an attempt to kind of trigger some City press and play through the press, which is something they like. That's the primary way they score goals: is trigger press, attack the space via Kane and Son, and that's how they score the goal. Do that often, do that more often. But for maybe 20 minutes in the first half, between, let's say, 20-ish minutes and the end of the half, they were just gathered around the box, lump it forward, or the ball finds its way to Son. Nobody's with him. Everybody else is behind the ball, including Kane. And then Son just loses it, and it's another City attack. So, and that's ultimately... City deserved the goal for that, for persisting, and for also because Tottenham were so unwilling to capitalize on the fact that City were pressurizing them so much, and that's one of the trade-offs with Pep's tactical style, is the amount of space that's left behind.
I do the problem with that though, Ali, I think, is most goals in the Premier League are scored now shortly after a turnover. So playing it out from the back consistently when you win the ball against Man City is an extremely dangerous game. I think we forget how good they are at pressing rather than just keeping the ball. Man City stifle defences, stifle midfield really quickly. And potentially Conte just didn't see it, especially maybe going 1-0 up, as something a risk worth taking.
You know what I think as well? The kind of indication I get from watching Man City, and I don't know if the stats will back this up, but they score in the first 20, 25 minutes in a lot of games. They go 1-0 up in a lot of games quite early. And it feels like to me that if they have any weakness, that is it. If the game state is actually quite tense, then they're just, and it's the same with any team. They're not going to be as good if the game's getting on and they're not in the desired position they want to be. not saying they run out of ideas, but certainly I think you can get something against them. So maybe there was kind of and Tottenham, you got to remember as well, they've lost 3 games in a row. There's been a storm around the club kind of in the last week with Conte coming out, and there's reports he's been told not to do interviews in Italian, and he's kind of been seen to criticize the club and the group of players he's got. There's kind of a siege mentality with it all, I think, with the way they approached it, which was right over our dead body. Are we gonna go 2-3-0 down early and just be out of this thing? It's kind of about survival. If we get to halftime winning or level as they ended up being, that's fine. That's absolutely fine, because we can get a result the longer this game goes on. So look, I don't want to be the one sitting here defending Tottenham. I loathe that position. But what I will say is that on the day, he played the hand that, quite frankly, they were dealt very well. Tottenham are a transition team. There's no doubt about that. They are not a team that are going to farm 70% of the ball, let alone against a team like Man City, but generally against any opponent. If you watch them, they're at their best when they're sucking teams in and hitting them on the break, because they've got a striker that's one of the best, if not the best, nine and a halves in the world, where he can drop in and play passes like he did for the opening goal.
That pass was ridiculous. The pass
it was. It's crazy defending, by the way. I mean, we should add. I can't understand.
I have things to say about this goal. Things to say about this goal, because I found it quite weird. And maybe it's early in the game, and the players are kind of gathering concentration, or like they're still not into the game fully yet. Like, it's the start of it. It's fine. But first of all, the space left behind is quite a lot of space. Now, there were 3 defenders. That was Cancelo, leftmost, Laporte in the middle, and Ruben Dias on the right.
Yeah.
And the first 2 were past the halfway line. Dias wasn't. And essentially, they were every Man City team was pinned by, or like had a Tottenham man on them. So Kane is on Laporte, Kulusevski is on Joao Cancelo on the other side, and Ruben Dias is on Human.
Yeah.
So Kane drops in, Laporte is sucked in with him, so he's past the halfway line. Now, Dias here makes 2 mistakes. First of all, doesn't recognize that all of the players past the halfway line, so he doesn't step up beyond the halfway line, because then any run from the Tottenham players is going to be offside, because the run's starting pretty much from the halfway line. But the second mistake is that once he realizes this, the pass is already played, and he wants to step up to play the offside trap, and he gets it way off. So Human Son's away. Yeah. So it's a really good move by Tottenham. Kane plays an outrageous pass, but
it's
also
a great pass.
I think it's like a 2 or 3 way error by Man City.
What I was going to say as well, like, you're absolutely right with the errors you pointed out, but also for how high, as you said, there's 1 player in Man City's half. The other 9 outfield players are in Tottenham's half. The ball gets to Kane so easily. It's unbelievable. It's almost uncontested, and it's so strange for a team that one of, if not the best, at winning the ball in the opposition's half like that. Along with Liverpool, I think. The ball goes into Kane pretty much uncontested, and then there's 1 pass and he's through on goal. It's strange. Structurally, it did not look right whatsoever. It's one of those goals you probably won't see scored against Man City again for the rest of the season. I mean, it's just absolute madness. I mean, it is really good play from Kane. It's a good run from Son. I mean, how many times have we seen that into outrun from him with the Kane passing it in behind him? And it just, if you were going to pinpoint a blueprint for how Tottenham could score a goal and could get something, it pretty much would be that. And it just surprises me. And then you're chasing the game, and it just feels like to me that Tottenham, for all their faults, and they still have a lot. I mean, look, you got to remember, this is a team that had lost at home previously to Southampton, lost to Wolves, and I'm not trying to say this as a biased fan, but they clearly have problems. But they seem to match up quite well against Man City, because it's kind of what they're good at is potentially, if Man City do have a chink in the armour, it is teams that are they counter on you quickly and have runners and are structured in that. But it just seemed too easy on that goal. I mean, like the other goals, I don't know if you sort of want to talk about them in a bit more detail, but they were slightly better worked. I think at least they had to do a bit more for them. It wasn't just one pass and then he's through on goal.
That's my point. When you're so good at transition play, sucking pressure in, and at that point, Man City were still chasing the game because they probably wanted to get something more than a point out of it.
No, they want to win every game.
They went 2-1 down, and then the disallowed goal, rightly so, Kulusevski was offside, and then the goal laid on in added time are possibly, like, they're almost carbon copies.
Yeah,
passing in one side of the pitch. And then Kulusevski is completely free. Like, Peter Drury is so good, and I'm so lucky that I get to listen to him every week commentating against some game. What a man. Like, this guy's usage of words is impeccable. It tells the story of the game really, really well. In the third goal, he said, Kulusevski set off running eons ago. That was his words. Because Kulusevski had peeled away so far early. Because Cancelo was sucked into pressing Tottenham players passing around in midfield. And even in the disallowed goal, Kulusevski should have done a better job at recognizing his position and where the defensive line is.
He didn't need to be offside.
He didn't need to be offside at all.
Yeah.
And it was a really well-worked goal in that respect. Passes in one side of the pitch. Switch of play to Kulusevski is completely free. The same thing for the third goal. And in both cases, Kulusevski was freed long before the play was made to him. And that's the thing. Like, that's why I say in the first half they didn't utilize that more. Like, they could have killed the game off in the first half, in my opinion, because defensively they were doing an amazing job at limiting Man City's quality of chances. And Man City equalized with a dodgy penalty anyway.
Yeah, a dodgy penalty and a goalkeeper mistake. Like,
and a goalkeeper error.
If you look at the two goals they scored, for all the ball they had, they didn't create an awful lot. Pretty, like, as we said, it's a goalkeeping error for the first goal. There's no two ways about it. And then it is a penalty, but it's quite unlucky. Like, you're not trying to win a penalty like that, and it just kind of ends up hitting his hand.
It's in the 60-40 margin, I guess. It is a penalty. You don't see it everywhere.
That decision I'll refer back to specifically later on for a good reason.
Okay, let's hold it.
Just you can timestamp that. You can note that one down. But yeah, they didn't create an awful lot. Tottenham defended well. I think the best part of their performance, as much as like people will go on about the Kane Son, that didn't surprise me particularly. Like, I expect them to do that. I think they defended the half spaces really well. Because if you watch Man City, they're very good at obviously getting the ball out into those wide half spaces, creating overloads there, and then how often do they get to the byline, cut it back, and have a tap in? I mean, like, they play without a striker and yet score so many goals like that. Tottenham defended those areas really well. Obviously, Romero had a very good game, even though the penalty was quite unlucky. I think their wing backs did well in what they were tasked with. I mean, Emerson Royal still looks extremely limited on the ball, but he stuck to his task, as did Sessegnon. This was a performance from Tottenham. I didn't think they'd win. Obviously, I thought they'd get beat, but it doesn't surprise me massively in terms of the kind of blueprint and the way they went about getting a result, because I've seen them do this before. I've seen them do this before against Man City under 3 different managers, no less. So you have to give them credit with that. And they had to get a result. I think if they lose that, they end up 6 points behind Arsenal. I think it would be now something like they would have been 10 points behind Man United, albeit with a few games in hand. It's very difficult to, and they have something like, I think their goal difference is now 0. Had they lost, it would have been negative. It's very difficult to come back from that. I mean, you basically have to, you can't just get level. You have to get more points because your goal difference is going to be worse. They probably had to win, if I'm honest. Even a draw leaves them a long way back, given their 2 previous results at home, which were really bad results kind of for that reason, because then you have to go and get a result at Man City. Where am I going with this? Yeah, they can win games like this. I think if I'm assessing Tottenham going forwards, though, they've got 2 games in the next week against Burnley and against Leeds. In both those games, they should be having the lion's share of possession. And it's kind of like, how are they then going to deal with those sort of games?
Yeah,
because
that is true.
That for me is the question. How are they going to deal with it when a team goes, okay, well, we're not going to fly out of our own half and let you play one pass through to Son. you can have the ball. We're going to pretty much do what you do, which is, sit on our 18-yard, particularly Burnley. I think Leeds will be a bit
I
different.
was going to say Leeds might one ball through Leeds might actually.
But Burnley will be interesting, not because they're a good team, but because they will camp in. They'll have 8-9 men behind the ball, and they'll say break us down. And I'm not saying Tottenham, they should still win that game, but it's one where they maybe don't match up as well stylistically. But that's the thing for me. Where does this leave Man City? We don't talk about Man City a lot on this podcast. Is it just a blip? Is it a team, as I've said, and I think we've kind of agreed, Tottenham are a pretty bad match stylistically for Man City in terms of they are good at doing the things maybe Man City, are vulnerable to. Is it just an off day, or is there kind of a deeper concern? Because I've seen a few Man City fans suggesting they got away with it against Arsenal, for being honest. They were lucky to take a point, let alone all three. And they've not quite played as well. I know they had a great win in midweek in the Champions League, but they've kind of huffed and puffed a bit in recent weeks in some of their Premier League games. Where are they, do you think, going forwards from this game?
I wouldn't be too concerned if I was a City fan. I think it's extremely hard to sustain, constant 10 out of 10 performances week in, week out. The way they play means that they don't have to do that necessarily. Yes, they've lost against Tottenham, but Tottenham are a good side. And like you said, I think stylistically they do. With the threat on the counter-attack, it seemed like a good fit for the Spurs team. I think it's still... I think it's still City's title. I wouldn't be too concerned if I'm entirely honest.
What do you think, Ali?
So this Tottenham games in particular, Man City seem to, every game against Tottenham in recent years, they seem to concede the same type of goal a lot on the break because of their style of trying to win the ball back as high as possible, and Tottenham just having two of the elites in transition. And that's just a symptom of Pep's limitations. And every tactic has a limitation. Every tactic will have its drawbacks. So I think this is just the particular game that they lost. The other blip was against Southampton, the 1-1 draw. Well, I wouldn't read too much into that, apart from the fact that now there is a title. There is a title
Forgot about
race.
Southampton. Yeah, that was another result they slipped up in.
And
there's definitely a title race. Yeah, there
is definitely a title race now, because now Liverpool are, and I didn't realize this until the morning, and I tweeted out Goal had tweeted, and that'll lead us nicely to the Liverpool game. Goal had tweeted that the title is in Liverpool's hands now, and I'm like, no. It's mathematically literally isn't, and it turns out it is, because of the game in hand on
and the goal
on
differences
Wednesday.
and the games in hand, and you still got to play them again.
We got to play them.
It is also in City's hand.
Oh yeah, no, it's in both.
It's in both of their hands.
Yeah, so I guess
it's an interesting situation.
I'm wrong as well. Like, that was a shock.
It's pretty rare, like it as it stands, obviously, and I expect there'll be drop points probably from both teams at some point. I mean, as we said, it's remarkable to just keep winning and winning. Yeah. I mean, both teams have shown they can do it, but generally, you've got to expect that they will slip up at some point. It's quite rare you get a situation where literally, because Liverpool are, if you assume they're going to beat Leeds, they're 3 points behind and they play each other. So both of them have it in their hands in terms, and the goal differences are really similar as well at the moment. I think they're both in the 40s, at 44 and 46 maybe. This is unprofessional for me. I should have checked it. But it's remarkable really. We could be in a situation come that game where it, essentially is a playoff. I mean, that, might be wishful thinking from a, spectacle point of view, but yeah, it sets it up nicely. Moving on, I mean, we've already mentioned Liverpool sort of in that preamble there. 3-1 win against Norwich, Ali. What did you make of it? I didn't catch this game because I was busy watching another game, which we'll come to later. But it seemed like Liverpool, were rocked back for 10 minutes with a sort of a freak deflection goal, but then scored 2 in quick succession, and from there probably got the win they ultimately deserved from the game.
You could say they were rocked for a bit longer, because for against Norwich, you wouldn't expect the game to be 0-0 for that long.
At half time. That's true.
Exactly. I didn't catch the game live either because I was working, as I mentioned at the start, but I did catch up with a lot of the game. And I think there are two things here. One, credit Liverpool for staying calm, I guess, in the circumstances. Three things, actually. Two, Pep Linders deciding to go 4-4-2 at 1-1. Changed the game completely. Three, the substitutions themselves, Henderson and Thiago. What a game from those those two. Henderson playing a hand in the first goal and the third goal. Henderson's kind of lofted ball to Tsimikas. Tsimikas not to get down. Tottenham with an outrageous finish on the bicycle kick. And the through ball to Luis Diaz after that many passes. I think it was like 33 passes. And a great finish from Luis Diaz too. His first Premier League goal for us.
I was going to sort of say,
in general.
Yeah. To me, I watched the Liverpool game in midweek against Milan.
Oh, yeah.
And what really stood out to me, and I think more so because you can make 5 subs in the Champions League, Liverpool suddenly look like they've got options off the bench. Like, it's really interesting how quickly it's changed with... I mean, they only signed Luis Diaz in January, but they've kind of got everyone fit now. And suddenly it looks like, okay, if you need to take a couple of midfielders off, you can bring a couple on. And if you need to take a couple of forward players off, you've got Firmino or Diaz or Jota. Like, 2 of them are going to be on the bench, at most times. I know Jota got injured in midweek, but...
And Firmino isn't available for some time.
Yeah. He was injured, wasn't he, earlier in the season? So it's just interesting that now, I think that's been the question all season, is do Liverpool have the depth to kind of go with Man City if they get a few injuries? And I still think if they get injuries to, the likes of Van Dijk or Alisson or Salah, they are irreplaceable players. And there's no shame in that. But they have options off the bench. And as you've mentioned, you brought a couple of players on and they've made the difference in a game where you had to win to keep pace. And I mean, who knows? Had you not won that game, maybe Man City would have gone and beat Spurs 5-0. Like, you just don't know, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's, I think Liverpool got a really good chance, actually. They're kind of building up ahead of steam. It was a dangerous month for them, that January, when they lost to Leicester, I think it was at the end of December. And then you had Salah and Mane going to AFCON. You sort of looked at it and thought... And then they had Chelsea, I think, and they drew that. And you thought, they're a couple of bad results away from the title race being over.
Yeah.
But Man City dropped a couple of points, and suddenly you're right there, Ali.
It goes in cycles. Earlier on this season, maybe October, November time, Chelsea were winning 4-0 against Juventus and just looking unbeatable. And I was then like, there was an episode I did with Virgil. I thought at one stage Chelsea have the title to lose. Like, if this is Chelsea.
Was that the game Chilwell done his ACL in as well, I think? And that's kind of where it changed for them.
Maybe it might have been, actually.
Yeah, I think he might have gone off with an ACL. But you're right.
Right now,
yeah.
I'm much more positive about our title chances, our Champions League chances, our Carabao Cup chances. We're still in the FA Cup. Why with the quadruple, Harry?
Well, not the quadruple.
However, I think it will depend on how quickly Firmino and Jota are back. Both are injured at the moment. Jota's is not quite as bad as first feared. Firmino will be out for a while, though. That's what Klopp said. Nobody.
I thought he was injured again. I knew he got injured earlier in the season. He was out for a few weeks.
He is out. That's why he didn't start the game. We started with Mane as a striker in Norwich, which I thought was quite weird. But I didn't know about the Firmino thing until afterwards. So much more positive though. Than a few months ago.
Needed to win. Got the result. And then, as we've talked about, Man City slipped up, and you've now got this game against Leeds in midweek, and you can go within 3 points, and by the looks of it, probably score a few goals and do your goal difference. Some good watching Leeds attempt to defend in the last few games. On one side of Liverpool, it's been pretty good. On the other side, not so much for your Merseyside rivals, who produced, I mean, it's a pretty low bar for Everton this season, some of the performances they've churned out.
Yeah.
But looking at this game, and I've watched parts of it back, I watched the highlights. There were no Everton highlights that I saw. Yeah. They didn't have a single chance that was shown.
It was actually funny watching the highlights.
This might be their worst performance of the season. And I know Southampton are on a good run and are playing well and a good... I mean, Southampton could push for the top half of the table. They're doing well at the moment. So, let's give credit where credit's due. But it was really bad from Everton. I mean, they're really getting dragged into this relegation battle now. If you look at their next 3 games, I think it's Man City, Spurs, Wolves. I don't know if it's that order, but those are their next 3 games. I mean, 3 bad results there, and
George,
they
your
could
man
be in the
Frank
relegation
Lampard.
zone.
This just confirms the general hypothesis that he's tactically just not very competent.
I completely disagree. I mean, that is woeful analysis. No, I'm joking. He's been poor. To be fair, I mean, Everton have been poor all season. He came into a
Oh
club
yeah, it's nothing new.
extremely stagnant, and he's trying to play a different way now. I get the feeling he doesn't trust a lot of his players. Like he clearly, he makes a lot of changes in midfield. He's brought in too many midfielders as well. Poor recruitment, in my opinion. In January, I don't know how much say he had. Probably quite a bit in terms of last minute deals. But bringing in 2 centre mids that were fairly similar. Obviously, Van der Beek plays a little bit deeper, but I don't believe they needed both. Having said
It
that,
is interesting that. Yeah.
I think they'll be okay because of the quality of the squad, and also how poor the teams are below them.
I think their home games will be key. I mean, they've only had 2 under Frank, and they've won them both, albeit against Leeds and Brentford, who aren't, they're in and around them in the table, those 2. But they've been better at home under him so far. I mean, they've been pretty poor in the 2 away games, admittedly, against Newcastle and Southampton. But I do think that they've got enough. Like, you look at it and you think Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin, I know Calvert-Lewin's been injured for a lot of the season, but like they should get them goals. And I'm not sure you could say that about some of the other teams down there. Although, to give credit to Burnley, they produced one of the best performances, I think, probably of the season in that 3-0 drubbing of Brighton. I couldn't quite believe that.
The goals are great. So Weghorst finished.
Yeah, it was a great
side
finish.
footer, and then the third goal, I think, was Aaron Lennon. Aaron Lennon just rifles one into the top corner. Nobody in the world is gonna save it. One thing about Newcastle getting Chris Wood is now I think, like I thought about this yesterday. Why didn't Newcastle sign Weghorst instead and then just leave Chris Wood at Burnley? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think his Premier League experience, isn't it, is a bit less of a risk.
And we should say, I mean, it's not that Weghorst has been bad, but that was his first goal in 4 games or whatever he's been there for. So it's not like he's come in and hit the ground running straight away. Yeah. Chris Wood's not started especially great for Newcastle, but they're getting results.
XG figures from the game are quite funny too. I don't have the actual numbers in front of me.
Brighton Burnley.
But Brighton.
Honestly, it was a strange one following that. Yeah. I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but I thought I'd put that in there. Let's talk about some of the other games. We've already mentioned Leeds, but they played out an interesting game today. Hell must have frozen over because Man United scored from a corner today, which I think was their first corner goal in something like 140 corner kicks. It's
exactly 140 kicks.
Yeah, and the funniest part about all of it is that they actually hired a set piece coach in the summer. It's similar. I think we did it last season as well. We hired some guy from Brentford and we did this bloody thing where we just put like 8 men on the line and started crossing it in and we scored like 1 all season. I mean, I don't know what it is with some of these hipster coaches coming in and kind of trying to reinvent the wheel.
Hipster coaches. Marginal gains, Harry. Marginal gains.
There you go. Well, we definitely didn't gain anything. And Man United haven't gained anything either.
It's a matter of execution. If you're coaching a team and they're not carrying it out, what's the coach's problem?
Yeah, but then I watched the corner they scored today and it just looks like the most basic thing. Just whip it into a good area and heads it in.
It's more Leeds have just been incapable of defending.
I mean, the goalkeeper, honestly, it's just abysmal what he does for that. It's abysmal what he does for 3 of the goals to them. It's just absolutely diabolical.
Llorente,
I mean, it was
very poor.
I don't want to spend like ages on this, but it was kind of vintage Man United where they're okay in 5-10 minute spells, scored a couple of nice goals. Once they conceded a goal, they were mental midgets and conceded straight away again, and it was 2-2, and then it was kind of. Yeah, I mean, it was classic Man United.
Wait. We have a title for the episode. Mental Midgets.
Mental Midgets.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
And you can apply it to whoever you want in this episode. It doesn't have to be Man United. You can pick your team.
The quality in midfield in this game was absolutely... I know the ball didn't... The range didn't help.
It was a poor surface, you should say.
awful. That genuinely, it was first touch and then second touches had to be tackles. Like every single time someone in midfield had the ball, it was just woeful.
Add this to the dossier of refereeing gaffes from this weekend. Scott McTominay made 7 fouls today and somehow avoided being sent off.
Not just 7 fouls.
It
Most
was
of his fouls were
3 or 4
so
of them
late.
were reducers. I mean, it's unbelievable what he. Honestly, I cannot believe he stayed on the pitch today.
Yeah, me neither.
I've seen one of the Arsenal journalists I follow. He has this like scale where it's if that was Granit Xhaka, he calls it, right. On the if that was Granit Xhaka scale, Xhaka would have been sent off about 4 times for what Scott McTominay. It's unbelievable what he got away. It's incredible. So add that to the.
He somehow managed to smash his face into a Leeds player, make him bleed, and he just walked away like it was absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
he put some photo up.
He's got some meat,
hasn't he? He put a photo of after the game of like his gashed leg, and I thought, well, that's the least you deserve for the way you've blown
brutalised the Leeds players.
I learned when I was younger watching Egyptian football. I'm Egyptian for anyone new, so wondering why I mention Egypt at all. Any foul that leads to head injury that includes bleeding is a red card. That's what I've grown up like learning. So when he did that tackle, red card. That's my first thought. And I thought it should have been like at least a yellow.
It's a yellow. He smashed his head against him. It's weird. I don't know why he did it.
Yeah. I mean, it was a great game though. But I mean, you like to see that in a derby like that. I mean, everything was going into it, and it was a great spectacle. Actually, I have to say, 6 goals, absolute chaos, bad defending, good finishing, bad goalkeeping from both goalkeepers. I mean, it was just chaos. I mean, I wish Leeds would have won, but it was a fantastic game. Newcastle were really good. I watched Newcastle this weekend. First time I've watched them in a few games. I was really impressed. I thought they actually, of the 2 teams, were the more deserving if anyone was to win that game. I thought they played really well. It's as good as I've seen them under Eddie Howe.
Yeah, and Eddie Howe has changed the club completely, and the culture and the way. I mean, obviously the takeover helped as well, but the way things are at St James's is completely different now. It's unbelievable how much.
Yeah, and you can attest to that.
The atmosphere has changed. And not only that, they're playing better football. Newcastle, throughout the years, have always been known for great football up until obviously the past, 6, I suppose, and maybe a little bit into the Pardew era as well. Where it's a bit dross. But Newcastle have been fantastic. And not only that is, I think there's a lot of players that Eddie Howe knows are dead weights and need to be completely gutted. Jacob Murphy, Almiron. I think Joe Linton's got a place, but there's a lot of players.
But he's still getting a tune out of them.
Still getting a tune. Kraft, they all need to go, and they will go in the summer, I imagine. But at least for now,
I was going to say, when the new owners came in, it must be so obvious to probably 9. And it was kind of the reason I thought they could go down, because you look at it and you think 95% of these players know that within probably 18, 24 months, they're not going to be there, because where the club is looking to go, they are going to be left behind on this journey. And so how do you then cultivate an environment where they're giving everything to survive, because they might not even be at the. I mean, if they get relegated, they probably have to stay. But if they don't, they're probably going to be sold on anyway and probably have to move down. So I think he's done a great job of, as you said, getting everyone on side, getting everyone working for each other, fostering a good culture in the dressing room, and all this stuff plays into ultimately what you get on the day. Obviously, the tactical element of it all makes sense, is important, but you have to get everybody in the right headspace and prepared to give everything. And I looked at that and I thought that was 11 players out there that were giving everything for the cause and fully deserved to take at least a point from that game. It was really impressive for them.
Absolutely.
I want to move on because I need to get something off my chest about this weekend. I watched the Arsenal game. We played really well. Deserved to beat Brentford more than 2-1. Very pleased with that aspect of it. I'm not pleased with the refereeing, and it's nothing new. And I don't want to be the guy that just rants about referees needlessly.
You don't want to take my reputation.
No, I mean, you can have that one. And
Thanks.
I want to make it clear that I'm not necessarily suggesting that there's anything sinister going on in terms of referees favouring certain teams and certain teams not getting decisions. But I just cannot believe in this game we didn't get given at least one penalty. There was 4 different incidents where we could have had a penalty, probably should have had a penalty. And it's not necessarily that all of them are disgraceful decisions, but it's kind of like an accumulative thing. Like you add them up. If you have 4 50-50 decisions and you get none of them, I mean, what are the chances of that? And I just look at it, and the consistency of it makes no sense. I think the most obvious one is the handball, where the Brentford player slides in and his arm goes above his head like that to block the ball on the ground. Nothing given, not referred to VAR. And then you've got the Spurs, a Man City Spurs game, less than 2 hours later, and Romero is sliding in, and it's pretty much exactly the same thing, hand above his head, and it gets referred to VAR, and a penalty is given. I do not, and it's nothing new, and it's been going on all season, but I do not understand the inconsistency between what is deemed appropriate for the referee to go and have a look at and what isn't. Because you've essentially now got this kind of arbitrary situation where they go to the monitor, but you already know they're overturning it. It's not that they're going and having another look because it's close enough to warrant the referee having a second look. And I'm not saying I just want loads and loads of stoppages, because maybe you would reach a situation where there is too much of it. But I think there needs to be a balance between what is essentially VAR's making the decision, but the referee's just having a look at the monitor. Kind of, it's almost like they're just ticking a box, like for the, it's due process or whatever. They have to do it, but it's getting overturned. And they're looking to, and if they were looking at the monitor too much, and I think you need to find a balance between the two, because some of the decisions are, we end up winning the game, and deservedly so. But had we not won that game, I would not have been able to get over it, because it just doesn't make any sense to me that some of these decisions, when you've got VAR, it makes no sense to me at all.
It's with the whole monitor thing, it absolutely makes no sense to me. I'm trying to find the right word, but I can't think of it. But the whole essence of it is, it's like, it's not hypocritical, but it basically, to need a monitor suggests that it's subjective, because VAR can't make the decision itself and needs the ref to go back and see it to then decide on his own whether or not he thinks it is. So it's completely
it's so confusing.
I'm trying to think of the word, but it's completely defeats the purpose of having VAR, where you overturn what they have described as clear and obvious. Well,
do you know what it is with a lot of them as well?
Just, I don't know.
With the whole clear and obvious thing, I think the thing is that because it's been branded as you don't overturn stuff unless it's clear and obvious, that's assuming the referee is absolutely forthright and certain with his decision. I.e., he's seen a penalty appeal and he's certain it wasn't one, and therefore you need concrete evidence to suggest it actually was one. But what if the referee's not sure? Like, I'm pretty sure for at least 2 of those penalty appeals, the referee didn't see it properly, and therefore you're probably not going to give it, and VAR can have a look, and if it is a penalty, gives it, and if it isn't a penalty, doesn't give it. But the problem is VAR's assuming the referee didn't think it was a penalty, and therefore it's kind of like there's a certain amount they have to be sure it's a penalty to overturn it. And that's where I think it's becoming a problem for me, this whole clear and error rhetoric.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense to me. Either it's a penalty or it isn't. And I understand some are going to be hotly disputed and you're not going to get everything right. But I surely think, given the amount of replays they're looking at for some of these goals and appeals, and they could be doing a lot better than what they are. Again, I'll stress, I don't want to keep talking about referees because it's boring, it's tiresome. But on another day, we might end up drawing or even losing that game. And it's almost exclusively down to poor process, particularly with VAR.
Yeah.
I think my final decision on VAR is that it is incompatible with football. So, bin it.
I would get rid of it, just to make my opinion clear. I don't think it's particularly realistic. I don't think they will get rid of it. I think that was the whole thing with it at the start. It was once we transitioned to VAR, there kind
There's
of isn't
no
any
return.
going back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is true.
And I think
It's
we've now
strange.
reached a point because we're so entrenched in it. And don't get me wrong, you do need it sometimes. So the example I
Yeah.
keep thinking of, that Tottenham Chelsea game in the Carabao Cup, Tottenham got given two ridiculous penalties. I mean, can you imagine if they'd won that game and gone to Wembley because of those two decisions? It would have been an absolute farce. And so for that, you do need it. And it was good in both cases because it was literally one look at both of them. Neither of those are penalties. Job done, overturned. That's what you need it for. But
I
then
remember when
everything
it
in
was.
between is blurred lines.
I remember when it was introduced to the World Cup, and it actually ran really smoothly. And
Yeah.
I can't see why Premier League football seems so far away from that. VAR, the word it's finally come into my mind. VAR has become a paradox. It contradicts itself, especially when you take so long to make a decision. If it's taking that long to make a decision, it's subjective. So if you need to look at 10 replays, it's clearly not objective, and therefore you move on. But there seems to be some bizarre decisions at the end of it. It's not working. Something needs to change.
Clear and obvious, but then the offsides, for example, are anything but clear and obvious. Like they're by that much. And even if you look at the maths behind it, because you're freezing it, there's kind of a degree of error of when the ball leaves the player's foot. It's just never going to be completely accurate. So I think, at least I'm going to conclude, referees are bad, VAR is bad, and I just don't see it improving it anytime soon. And it's just depressing because, as I said, on another day, it costs you the result, and it's just so frustrating because it can't be as bad as this, and yet it doesn't seem like it's getting any better.
And you're at the ground as well. I feel you.
I wasn't on this occasion.
Oh, you wasn't
actually.
on this occasion.
I wasn't.
Yeah,
thank God. I mean, honestly, it took them ages as well to make some of the decisions. It was just utterly ridiculous. But that's another problem with it. When you're in the ground, you just don't have a clue what's going on. It's just awful. The whole thing sucks, basically. Let's move on.
Yes.
So in the next segment, we're going to look at a bit of European football. Okay, and moving on, we're going to talk a bit about some of the upcoming games in the week for the Champions League. George's Chelsea are in action against Lille. How are you feeling about that one, mate?
Yeah, I mean, Champions League I'm pretty confident with, only because we don't concede effectively, and if we do, it's normally penalties. So
good
pretty
team,
happy
Chelsea.
with that. Yeah, we're a decent knockout team.
Tuchel's he's a knockout specialist.
Yeah,
actually.
champions of the world. So champions of the world. We'll
get that one in there.
Get the European title again.
Yeah, I'd expect them to beat Lille pretty comfortably, actually.
Predictions. Who's going to go through?
I think 1-0 and then a 2-0 away from home.
Yeah,
so.
I actually could see. Are they away first? They were actually
home first.
They came second. Yeah, I'd expect them to win the home leg to 0. Although away goals don't matter anymore, do they? I'm still getting used to that from some of the games from last week. So I suppose it's not as imperative to keep a clean sheet. I'd expect Chelsea to win by more than 1 goal. Although Lukaku was dreadful at the weekend. I know we didn't talk about the game. I mean, 7 touches. So
wow, really?
Did you not know
that's
that?
lowest since records began.
Lukaku had 7 touches in 90. He had 2 touches in the first half, and one of them was the kickoff. I mean,
that's incredible. That's actually incredible.
I genuinely think if you had a non-league striker and they went and played Man City away, I don't think they would do. It would be pretty hard to do worse than that, wouldn't it? 1 touch other than the kickoff. It's mad. So he's not been on form. I still think Chelsea will win, though. I think that they get more than the sum of their parts. They're a very solid knockout football team.
Me too. General agreement.
Yeah. Villarreal Juventus. Where do we see this one? I mean, Juventus have been poor this season. They've been really bloody average. I know they topped the group with Chelsea, but
Vlahovic is a good addition. I think they needed a finisher.
He's pretty poor the other night when I saw him. He might have even been last night.
That's the thing with strikers. So if you're not scoring goals, you're going to have a bad
He's on
game,
fraud watch now for all Arsenal fans. You have to understand that. At least you're going to watch every game he plays. Every mistake he makes is going to be clipped up because he was rubbish anyway, and we didn't want him.
All right. But I think I'm going to go for Juventus just because they have They have a
I
bit
think,
more quality.
like, I agree,
No.
but I don't think convincingly. Like, I think Emery's a decent knockout football manager. He is a pragmatic manager. He's not, he's not a 38 game a season guy that gets results from week to week. But when it comes to beating a team across two legs, he's albeit like probably worse teams in the Europa League, but he's proven he can do it. They probably should have beaten Man United in the groups as well. They're a very decent side. They're not bad. But I think Juventus will squeak through.
I'm
George?
going to make a really specific prediction that it goes
Go
to
on.
penalties. But Juventus do go through.
Okay.
That's my prediction.
Even after that brilliant shootout win for Villarreal in the
Yeah.
Europa League, gosh, yeah, that's interesting.
Even that.
That's because De Gea was in goal.
Yeah, because
And Man United just don't save penalties, as this season's proved as well. We'll leave their game till last. I want to talk about Benfica Ajax first. I haven't watched a lot of either team, but I was notified by Fergal on the last podcast I did. Benfica had a pretty dreadful week where they went out the cup and they lost some league game to a team that they really shouldn't be losing to.
Yeah. Toxic
They're not very
atmosphere
good. For Tongan and Otamendi still getting a game for them.
Yeah.
Ajax.
Adelta
are going through.
Rap, though, is in Benfica, so you never...
He's at Benfica, isn't he? Yeah, I remember that from
yeah.
last season, actually. Yeah.
But yeah, Ajax go through. Easy.
I think Ajax go through.
yeah, Ajax love being knocked out in the quarters, finals, and semi-finals. So Ajax for me.
There you go.
Cool.
Right, the last game. This is probably the one that warrants the most discussion. Atletico Madrid against Manchester United. I find this one really tough to call because both teams are not very good.
I don't find it tough to call at all.
You don't?
Yeah, no. Atletico are going to go through pretty straightforwardly. I think United lack a lot of character, and
Ronaldo not going to drag them over the line then in Europe.
No.
Season.
Ronaldo's form is like what, 1 goal in 6 now. No, it's not going to happen. So the problem with Man United now is that they've truly lost a lot of the character you need for big European games. And Ronaldo, start of the season, Ronaldo used to drag them over the line so many times. I think twice against Villarreal, once against Atalanta. So no,
twice against Atalanta, I think.
Atletico Madrid have already conceded more than they conceded all of last season, and their defensive displays have been
the
shocking.
defense is gone.
All Black very out of it, and they are the worst defense, I think, in the top 11 teams in La Liga this season. Like
mad, isn't it? It's just crazy.
Which is crazy. There will be goals for both teams, but Atletico, I think, pretty straightforward to go through. Something like 4-1 on aggregate or something.
You know what? I'm gonna give this a bit of wishful predicting and just like bear with me on this one. Man United will go through, and I want them to go through because I know they're not going to win the Champions League. There is just no way they will win it.
A bit easier.
But I want them to go through because then that puts their focus on that a bit more, and they might drop some points in the league that they otherwise might not have.
I'm going a different route, Harry. I really hope Atletico batter them, and their morale. Ronaldo kicks up a fuss. Obviously,
that's true. That is actually true.
Maguire puts in an own goal, and Ronaldo. That's the final straw for Ronaldo. And he's like, no, I'm taking captaincy. Obviously, I think Ragnick will back Maguire, and I think
he's already said,
and it'd be brilliant, and I think it'll just blow up. So I'm hoping for Atletico Madrid.
It's interesting that, isn't it? I suppose, like if they had a run to the semi-final, you do, have a situation sometimes.
You worry about Ronaldo as well. You do worry about Ronaldo. I'm
not worried about them winning it, but maybe it kind of transfers over into their league form and they get a bit of momentum. I think either way they're pretty poor and they're going to lose games and they're not going to win the Champions League. I mean, they're not good enough. 1-11. I honestly think like of all the teams that will go through, I think they'll comfortably be the worst, if not second or third worst. There's a lot of teams that are better than them basically. Moving on after we've cast our predictions, just to sort of have a roundup in Europe. Fergal's not here. Are we going to do the tabs on Tammy without him? in his honor.
I can fill in this week because
Yeah.
there's a thing or two to say about Serie A this week. Complete entertainment, guys. If you're not watching Serie A, make an effort to try to watch it because it's bizarre how the title race is going. The race for Europe is going. So no goals for Tammy this week, and the red card for Jose Mourinho yet again.
That is music to my ears.
In a 2-2, a Desmond home draw, with Hellas Verona, who are now one place behind Roma, in 9th. That's right, Roma are in 8th place now. Although the difference between them and Europe is not the biggest. But so they're still in the conversation. In terms of the title race in Serie A, so yesterday, we're recording on Sunday. So Monday night, there are 3 teams involved in the title race. Monday night, Napoli plays against 18th place Cagliari, so you'd expect them to win. However, AC Milan, who were top of the league coming into this game week, drew against 20th place Salernitana 2-2. So Milan ended up dropping points. Afterwards, Inter Milan, earlier today on Sunday, played Sassuolo at home, lost 2-0. So AC Milan got ahead by 1 point. They're now 2 points ahead of Inter Milan. Inter Milan have a game in hand, so if they win it, they're only 1 point ahead of AC Milan. But now you have a situation where Milan should have won against 20th place, got like at least some spring in their step, and given Inter lost to Sassuolo. But then Inter failed to capitalize on AC Milan's loss, and who knows what's going to happen in Napoli against Cagliari, and that will have been played when the episode comes out. So this you'll know the result by now.
Right at the top.
Yeah. The Serie A is bizarre, and I expect the title race to go right to the wire because all teams are inconsistent. Like everyone.
It'll go right to the wire in Italy, not in France, unfortunately.
Not in France, although PSG lost 3-1 to Nantes.
Yep.
They are 13 points clear.
About that penalty?
What's that? Oh, Neymar. I didn't actually watch it. You reminded me now.
Yeah. Have you seen it, George?
Yeah. It's the worst penalty to hit the target.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it's every bit as bad as, like, Ademola Lookman's failed Panenka. Yeah. It's on that sort of level. It's just terrible. Those look dreadful when they don't come off. I've always thought, like, they look great when you send the keeper the wrong way and it just rolls. But if the keeper just stays where he is,
I feel like the keeper could have dived, got back up, and then
he could have controlled it.
Thrown himself
to the literally just controlled it with his left foot and like just done a little ball roll and picked it up. I mean, it's just awful penalty.
It does make me wonder how boring this season's going to be for PSG if they're knocked out of the Champions League.
It's the same every year. I know that they've cocked up the league a couple of times. Don't get me wrong. I mean, in recent years, they haven't always won it.
They're 13 points clear now.
Their expectation is they win the league. Anything less is a disaster. But if you win the league, you don't really get any credit for doing that because that's what's expected.
Yeah.
And pretty much, and I've said this before on this podcast, they are a soulless club for this reason. Their only objective is to win the Champions League every year, which is essentially knockout football.
Yeah.
And you're going to get, Man City have probably been the best team in Europe over the last 3 or 4 seasons, haven't won it. I know they got to the final last year, but they haven't won it. They've dicked it up a few times. If that's your only aim going into a season, it is quite boring, I think.
Yeah, and then when you win the Champions League, it's a relief rather than joy.
Yeah, rather than I think enjoying it, And I'm not saying like PSG before they, got the bloody takeover and were a nothing club. I mean, I'm not saying they're worse now than they were then. Obviously, like they've, won a load of titles and stuff. But I don't know. It must just get quite boring. I don't have any sympathy for them though. Like, like Man City, I just kind of, to be honest, I'm actually starting to feel apathy towards Man City because they keep dicking it up against Tottenham for no other reason than that. But like, other than that, like clubs like Man City and PSG, just kind of, I don't really care too much.
I don't care if they win. Yeah, they win the Premier League. I don't care. No,
just completely irrelevant.
But someone who I have a lot of sympathy for, U.S. men's national team player, is Gio Reyna. He started today. Because he started today for the first time since August. because of a long-term injury, and then came off with an injury and looks on top, which looks a long-term one. It's just awful.
That's rough.
27 minutes in, Dortmund ended up winning 6-0, but that's like just part of the story. But man, I feel
they
so
recovered
bad.
from their midweek drubbing by Rangers.
Oh yeah, that was bizarre, wasn't it? That was like, and then Rangers lost today to Dundee United.
Yeah, they're not.
That's just football, isn't it?
So, that's just football.
Dundee would probably be in the 3rd division of German football.
Yeah, Bayern Munich were threatening go on.
Was it a draw? I think it was a draw today.
Oh, was it a draw? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's more for me. I saw the scoreline and didn't remember it was like maybe 27 minutes in or something. Like it was in the middle of the game when it was 1-0. Okay, so yeah, they did draw to Dundee United. Bayern Munich were threatening to be on a bit of a rotten run. So they'd lost to Bochum 4-2. They drew against Salzburg 1-1 in the Champions League. Obviously, severe underperformance, despite how good Salzburg are in general. And then they were 1-0 down against actual last place team, Greuther Fürth, today. And then they just came out second half, banged out 4-1. So they're back, I guess. They just
even if they had lost, it wouldn't really have. Well,
to the Tunnel Race, it wouldn't have mattered, but it would have been a concern, like because then Borussia Dortmund, I think, are 6 points behind, something like that. So they're not completely out of the question. Obviously not mathematically, not like PSG, 13 points ahead.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I strain it with Bayern. I mean, I think they're good, and I think they'll do well in the Champions League. But I think there's something like second favourites, like their betting odds are better than Liverpool, which I just find baffling because I can't see them winning it. They look hella dodgy against Salzburg as well, who did play well. Moving on, let's finish this week with our fantasy picks, guys. Fergal's not here, so I don't know if we're going to be able to go over the maths of it all. But
no, we are.
Have you got it? Have you got it to hand?
I've got it to hand.
He comes prepared. He comes bloody prepared. We've still got a double game week in progress, right?
Incoming.
We have.
I've just realised who I picked as well. For God's sake!
Oh God!
And what the hell was going on there?
So,
was he on the bench?
So Robertson, was on the bench. Tsimikas started. Trent Alexander-Arnold was on the bench. Joe Gomez started at right back.
Hey, we had a shocker, mate.
And I've picked Trent for
captain as well.
Captain.
Yeah.
But there's still the least game to play, so who knows? But George was spot on. Salah triple captain. So Salah already he already has 30 points, George, off this game week. Because obviously Salah has 10. So he got 3 bonus points.
Right. So you got 3 bonus
points.
Got the play
points and then
I was
the
going
goal.
to say, right, okay, yeah.
So Salah on 30 points for George, 10 points for Fergal. He played his wild card, so he picked Salah twice. He won't be able to pick Salah again. And I picked Trent for triple captain. 0. Harry picked Robertson. 0. George picked Salah.
Lovely.
30. And that changes the dynamic of the table completely.
That's
Harry and
incredible,
George.
actually.
I'm on 106 points, staying obviously where I am until further. When the Leeds game is played, who knows what's going to happen there. Fergal is second place with 106 points. So creeping ever closer since he got the 10 points of Salah.
I mean, you just mean 100.
Yeah.
He's 100 points. Fergal's 100 points. So I'm on 106. Fergal's 100. Still with the second game to play.
Yeah.
George has 30 points, up to 95 points in third place. 95. So Harry, I'm afraid after you had some form of a bright spark to your game and started creeping. You had the Jared Bowen 21-point week, and then 1-1-0-2-0 so far.
Full storm.
And so yep. So you're on 70 points, and you're completely out of the equation, I think, unless you have like a triple captain masterclass later on.
Well, I've got a triple captain up the sleeve, but I don't know who to give it to because I've wasted my Liverpool players, and you just can't trust Pep Guardiola to reliably play a Man City player because he just dicks about with rotation. So I've got to be really careful with that.
Yeah.
I'll just stick to the predictions. I'm good at predicting the table, but I'm dreadful at fantasy. I've had enough of it.
Yeah.
Yep. And on that note, on that depressing, downbeat, drab note, I think we'll leave it there for tonight. Thanks, as ever, to the guys for joining me.
Thank you, Harry. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.